Howdy, folks. Sometimes the Bible uses a little-known literary form that most people have never heard of. It's called chiasmus. Whatever does that mean? We begin to get a glimmer when we consider the origin of the name. It's from the Greek letter chi, which looks like the English letter X. In a chi, or an X, there are two lines that cross each other. If you consider just the bottom half of the letter, they form a peak. One line goes up to the peak, and the other descends down, like a pyramid. And that's what a chiasmus is like, only with words or blocks of text instead of lines. A chiasmus is a sequence of elements that can be divided into two halves, with the second half being a mirror image of the first, like steps leading up one side of a pyramid and down the other. A simple example of a chiasmus is Jesus' statement that the first will be last and the last first, which has an ABBA structure. That chiasmus occurs on the sentence level, but there are much bigger ones in the Bible, ones that span large blocks of text and that serve as major organizational principles in the Bible, even for an entire book of the Bible. Whether on the small scale or the large scale, chiasmus is a very common literary device in Scripture. There have even been whole books written about it, such as Chiasmus in the New Testament. It's found frequently in the Old Testament as well. We also use it today, often without realizing it. You can find chiastic structures in books and newspapers and everyday speech. It's easy to see how that can happen. You might start talking about one subject, then move on to a related one, and then move back to the subject you started with. Presto, you've just created a simple chiasmus. When speakers give lectures, they often start with a summary of what they're going to say, then they develop their subject at more length, and then they conclude with another summary. That's sometimes called the Army method. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. It's also a kind of chiasmus. In everyday cases like this, you might say, so what? Why should I care about chiasmus? Sometimes it's just a way of organizing material or making it easier to remember material. Sometimes it's even accidental. But not all cases are ordinary ones. Sometimes, including sometimes in the Bible, there's a specific reason why chiasmus is being used. Sometimes it's a form of subtle literary artistry, and understanding what the author is doing with the chiasmus can help us understand the message he's trying to convey. In that case, the two mirroring sides of the chiasmus are like two wonderful twins, and understanding how they come together causes their powers to activate. For example, much of the book of Genesis is organized into large chiastic structures. One of them is the cycle of stories dealing with Abraham. This material is arranged in the form of an enormous chiasmus that stretches from chapter 11 to chapter 22. It starts with the genealogy of Abraham's father, Terah. It then moves on to the beginning of Abraham's spiritual odyssey. It involves a story about Sarah, his wife, being in a foreign place and undergoing an ordeal that ends in peace and success. Then Abraham and his nephew Lot part company. In the next element, Abraham comes to the rescue of his nephew Lot and the city of Sodom. Then God makes a covenant with Abraham, and the birth of his son Ishmael is announced. God reaffirms his covenant with Abraham, and the birth of his son Isaac is announced. Then Abraham goes to the rescue of his nephew Lot and the city of Sodom again. Sarah is again in a foreign place where she undergoes an ordeal that ends in peace and success. And now Abraham and Ishmael part company. We then get the climax, the conclusion of Abraham's spiritual odyssey, and finally the genealogy of another relative of Abraham, his brother Nahor. Biblical scholars have noted that Genesis often contains two or more stories that are similar to each other, like the two stories about Sarah in a foreign land, or the two times that Abraham rescues Lot. Sometimes they've thought that this means Genesis was written in a slapdash manner, by combining different versions of the same story, almost at random. When you realize that the stories are carefully arranged in a chiastic structure, though, you realize it isn't slapdash at all. It's careful literary artistry. That tells you that you should be on the lookout for messages that may not always be obvious. Where should you look for those? One place is at the very center of the chiasmus, at the very top of the pyramid. That often gives you a clue to what the author considers most important. In the case of the Abraham cycle, it's when God enters into covenant with Abraham. The stories that lead up to the making of the covenant show what Abraham's like is life without a covenant, and the stories that follow show what it's like with a covenant. If you compare the stories on the two sides of the chiasmus, it's clear that things go better with Abraham once he's in covenant with God. It's showing us the difference that being in a covenant with God makes. And that conveys another message. If we want things to go well with us, we need to keep our covenant with God. That's an example of the kind of message you can learn when you're sensitive to and aware of the hidden pyramids of the Bible. If you like the information I've presented here, you should join my Secret Information Club. In case you're not familiar with it, the Secret Information Club is a free service that I operate by email. I send out fascinating information about the Catholic faith on a variety of subjects. The very first thing you get when you sign up is information about what Pope Benedict has had to say about the Book of Revelation. He has some very interesting things to say, and if you'd like to find out what they are, just sign up at secretinfoclub.com. Thank you.